Shields up, Iron Breakers. Work here coming at you with another video, and today we're going to be talking about endgame weapon upgrade systems for the Monster Hunter franchise. As you guys are no doubt aware, we're going to be getting some big news in regards to the upcoming Monster Hunter Wilds expansion in summer of this year, which likely means that that news is going to be dropping during Jeff Keighley's Summer Game Fest. As we've had plenty of Monster Hunter reveals during Jeff Keighley's shows, it just kind of makes sense that that would be the case. So I figured that now we're about a month off and change from that show happening would actually be a good time for us to have this discussion as a community of the systems that we appreciate in previous Monster Hunter entries and the things that we don't really like all that much. Because for those of you that don't know, the Monster Hunter team is actually incredibly receptive to community feedback, so I figured it'd be a good idea to just get our finger on the pulse and see where everybody is landing in regards to previous systems that we've had in the Monster Hunter franchise, as well as compare those with the Ardian system that we have in Monster Hunter Wilds, which a couple of months back received an upgrade to become the Gogma Artian Weapons, which have just exponentially increased their power level. So let's talk about this. And I figured that in order to do that, we'd have to go back to the first mainline Monster Hunter game that actually introduced an RNG weapon system. At least I believe that this is the first one where it happened. I think it was 4 Ultimate, right? With the guild weapons. I could be wrong here, so feel free to correct me in the comment section down below. Because, you know, back in those days, due to the fact that those games were still on the 3DS and all of that stuff, I struggled playing the 3DS for extended periods of time because my hands would cramp up and the little 3DS nub would just like stop working after a while. It was just very, very frustrating to try and control camera on those or even play it for lengthy sessions of time. To be honest, I should have gotten a 3DS XL, but I had a regular 3DS because I thought that like, oh, but you can change the plates on the 3DS and that's so much fun. And yeah, turns out it's just not very good for you to play over long periods of time because your hands are going to friggin' die. But anyways, in 4 Ultimate, that was the first game that we had, the guild weapon system, which for those of you that aren't aware, these were quests that you would take on, and the stronger the monster was on those quests, the better chance you would have of actually getting a good weapon, but those weapons would be randomly generated. Now, I remember talking with Gaijin about the system in 4 Ultimate, and he wasn't really a big fan of it because the idea would be, I think, that you would fight this quest with Rajang. Most of the time you'd be fighting Rajang because he's one of the strongest monsters naturally. Therefore, he would give you like some of the best rewards. And for him, it just didn't make that much sense that you'd be fighting this thunder monster when you were trying to hunt for like the best fire weapon, for instance, or even if you were trying to hunt for the best ice weapon, or if you were trying to hunt for the best anything weapon, you would be fighting Rajang or maybe some other monster, because I think there was like 2 monsters that had some of the best potential, you know, to get the highest level of weapons so that you could try and squeeze out a god roll or something like that. So I found that for a lot of people that system was frustrating, but I also know that a significant portion of the community actually really liked that system. And by the way, I'm not here to judge if you guys like the more RNG type systems. That's perfectly fine. And I don't want people in the comment section to be like attacking each other and whatnot. I think it's perfectly healthy for us to have our disagreements in terms of whether or not we like these systems and try to express those in a constructive way so that we can see where the community is actually at, because otherwise if we just like start slinging mud at each other, there really isn't going to be a proper constructive discussion that we can use to provide feedback to the team, right? Because if they jump into the comment section, it's just a bunch of people slinging mud. Your RNG systems are garbage, or your deterministic systems are garbage. You know, you guys know which side I lean. I personally much prefer a more deterministic type of system. That's just where I land, but that doesn't mean that everybody needs to land in the same place as me. But you know, for Ultimate, that's the system that we had. Let me know in the comment section down below how you guys felt about guild weapons, if you actually interacted with that system, because like I said, I'm not very well, I'm not an expert because I never got to actually experience that specific system. Then the next game following for Ultimate was Generations Ultimate. That game doesn't really have like an RNG type system. Pretty much all of the weapons are deterministic. The RNG systems in Generations Ultimate are actually in a form of charms, which is kind of like the way that things used to go back then. Most of the RNG systems were actually charms in the more old school Monster Hunter games. But from Generations Ultimate, we go on to World. And World, in the beginning, Monster Hunter World, which is still my favorite entry in the franchise, personally, base Monster Hunter World, I thought was like near perfect in a lot of ways. There's also a couple of things in there that we could like make a whole essay talking about things that I like and I don't like about Monster Hunter World, but arguably out of all of the ones that I've played, World still remains my favorite. But in the beginning of Monster Hunter World, before we've introduced all the title updates, the way that weapon upgrade systems work were very much deterministic. You'd be able to augment your weapon using the stream stones that you would be getting from fighting tempered monsters, particularly tempered elder dragons would be what most people would hunt, even though I personally spent more time hunting like the tier 2 monsters, so elders would be tier 3. I liked hunting tier 2s because they were a little bit faster and there was still like a good chance for you to get some cool stuff. But when you really wanted to get the best possible stream stones, you'd be going after the elder dragons. Usually, if I remember correctly, the tier 2s I would actually go for the decorations, which the decorations were RNG in World. To be honest, still a system that I prefer. RNG decorations over RNG charms, but that's a whole nother can of worms that will all start slinging mud at each other over. But yeah, so in World, in the beginning, we had deterministic stream stones, but then we had the introduction of Kulve Taroth, which I personally really find to be an interesting siege the first couple of times that you do it. After that, I just resorted to light bowgun, AFK type of situation where I'm just sitting there, rapid fire light bowgun with thunder and ice, if I remember correctly. You'd go back to the camp, swap to ice when she loses her mantle and whatnot. But anyways, the Kulve Taroth system is actually one of the systems that I really, really didn't like. I mean, I love the Siege. I think the Siege was a lot of fun. I like the idea of 16 players in the lobby all cooperating towards this one thing. I really, really like that. The progression of the Siege and all of that. And we were able to break this thing. You guys break that thing. And then everybody's like collaborating, getting more and more rewards. I thought it was a really fantastic system. So I enjoyed that a lot. But the actual reward system, that was miserable because it was complete RNG. You had no control whatsoever over which weapons you were going to get. And to give you guys an idea, I always like telling this story, but it's like in the first 2 weeks that event was available, because it was only available for 2 weeks. The first 2 weeks that thing was available, every single moment that I had of free time was spent grinding that thing. Whether I was streaming it or not streaming it, I was grinding like every little bit. It's like, I got like what, 2 hours where I don't really have anything to do? Time to go farm some more Kulve Taroth. And that burned me out completely on that particular system. Because the thing is, if you play Gunlance, the Kulve Taroth was the only way to get wide shelling level 4. You could not craft wide shelling level 4, which was very frustrating. And I kid you not, this is going to sound like just made up, but it was literally the last hunt that I did, as in after I did that hunt, Kulve Taroth went away. Like, so it was that close. It was the last run that I did right before Kulve Taroth went away. I did that and I got one wide shelling level 4 Gunlance, which allowed me to start playing around with wide shelling builds, which was good, but the whole experience was not particularly fantastic. I did not have a good time with Kulve Taroth system. But that was World. So for the most part, deterministic weapons, then Kulve Taroth came in and introduced like this whole RNG system, which you could get I think most of the weapons from Kulve Taroth, if you really upgraded them all the way, were mostly better than some of the stuff that was in the tree, the crafted tree progression that you have of weapons in Monster Hunter. Then we had Iceborne. Now, when Iceborne started, everything was fantastic because we had again, I say everything was fantastic. Like I said, I'm biased towards more deterministic systems. That's just me. I like really min-maxing, playing with things and being able to go like, okay, if I put 20 hours into this grind, I'm going to get these materials, and that's going to let me get this specific thing that I want. I'd rather have that, right, than just a different system where it's like, it's just completely random. Maybe you get what you want, maybe you'll never get what you want. But so I'm biased towards that. So with Iceborne, we have deterministic weapon upgrade augments in the form of the guiding lands upgrades. So you'd be leveling up the guiding lands, hopefully with friends, because trying to do guiding lands by yourself was kind of annoying. So I had 2 other friends that were like leveling different regions of the guiding land. So we always had every single region of the guiding lands available between us, which was very, very effective. So we'd be able to grind all the materials that we needed and all of that stuff, and it was all pretty much deterministic in terms of what we wanted to do. It's just a matter of putting in enough time to actually farming those materials. Now, beyond that, as title updates started coming around, we eventually got Safi Jiva. Now, Safi Jiva was a little bit more different. It did have RNG, but it was RNG preferable to the RNG of Kulve Taroth, because if you put in enough time, you could almost always get the kind of modifiers that you wanted on your weapon. But it was still kind of frustrating because I remember at one point I rolled this weapon like 200 times and I was not able to get the upgrade that I wanted, which was I wanted the Zora Magro set bonus on a gun lance, and I rolled that thing 200 times, at which point I was just like, I'm gonna save scum this because I'm mad. It's just like, nope, I'm not, you're not taking all my materials away in this one specific roll, you're not doing that. But you know, Safi Jiva was somewhat acceptable levels of RNG, I think, because I was able to get a ton of weapons that I actually wanted out of Safi Jiva, but it was still not my favorite system. And then, I forget if Safi Jiva came first or if Kulve Taroth and Master Rank came first, but I think it was Safi Jiva, and then we had Kulve Taroth Master Rank. And Kulve Taroth Master Rank was like, oh no, here we go again. Now, the thing is, you were able to bring your existing weapons up to snuff when you were doing Kulve Taroth Master Rank. So, to some extent, that was like, it's a little bit better, it's kind of okay, but to another extent, it was also very, very frustrating. But, yeah, Kulve Taroth Master Rank was another one. And then, funnily enough, with Iceborne, it just became a thing of, oh, we're just going to put out another monster, and that monster is going to become the default. After you've done Safi Jiva and Kulve, it's just like we had Raging Brachydios come up, and it's just, Raging Brachydios weapons just deal more damage than pretty much anything else for most of the weapon categories. And I was like, well, at least I don't have to use Safi Jiva anymore, because I'm kind of tired of those. But at the same time, it was kind of disappointing that rather than respecting the weapon tree that we've been working on, it's just like, oh, there's this new monster, here's the best weapon. And then eventually we got to, you know, redonkulous levels of power creep, which was the Fatalis gear. Now, both Brachy and Fatalis are fairly deterministic, so you'd figure, oh, well, Rurikhan, you'd like those. But the thing is, I'm very nuanced when it comes to my preferences in Monster Hunter. So it's like, I still want other weapons to be viable. Like, I would, in my ideal world, like a Rathalos gun lance would remain viable throughout the entirety of the game. When I say viable, I mean competitive with other weapons. So if you upgrade it enough, and if you put enough materials into it, it eventually becomes good enough that you can just use the Rathalos gun lance throughout the whole game if that's something that you want to do. But unfortunately, that was just not the case. And with Iceborne, once you got to Fatalis gear, it was Fatalis gear. Like 99% of builds were basically 4-piece Fatalis, 1 piece of something else that you might want, or even 5-piece Fatalis, plus the Fatalis weapon, and Bob's your uncle. Yeah, straight up. And you guys are like, oh, really? Was Fatalis good for gun lances? No, but we just slap lanced, and it was still more efficient than using shells. I mean, the most efficient way of actually playing the gun lance was the snowman bug, which, you know, I don't really use that, but yeah, if you really want to go all the way out, there was like this bug where your worm stake would interact with the snowman in a funky way, and if you just put a bunch of snowmans into monsters, and then you put a worm stake in there, it was just like you'd one-shot almost everything. So it's pretty crazy. But yeah, it was just this crazy messed up interaction. But anyway, by the time you reach the actual end game of Iceborne, your choice in weapon was mostly Fatalis. Like, that was it. There's one choice, which is not ideal. So to me, out of all of the ones that we've talked about so far, Base World is still one of the best ones, pre-Kulve Taroth. Iceborne. Iceborne, before all the title updates, was actually the best one, because being able to deterministically farm specific materials in the Guiding Lands, that was very satisfying. I really enjoyed the Guiding Lands. I know that not everybody enjoyed the Guiding Lands, but I really enjoyed interacting with the Guiding Lands and the monsters that the Guiding Lands unlocked and all of that good stuff. I thought that was awesome. And I understand that people that came later in Iceborne didn't really get to experience a lot of that, because a lot of the monsters that we unlocked through the Guiding Lands were actually available in the form of event quests. So a lot of you guys that came in late never got to experience the actual Guiding Lands progression of unlocking monsters and all of that, and you just had those available to you from the get-go. But you know, I'm just trying to bring you guys back with me on this trip through memory lane as we analyze all of these systems. Now, here's an interesting one. A lot of people did not like this game, Monster Hunter Rise. As a matter of fact, there was, for the longest time, there still is this rivalry between people that prefer Monster Hunter World and people that prefer Monster Hunter Rise. And because of the fact that social media just brings out the best in us, there were a lot of rivalries where I was just sitting there going like, yeah, you know, I really like Monster Hunter World. It's still my favorite, but guess what? Monster Hunter Rise is still a ton of fun. That's the way that I was going about it. So I greatly enjoyed Monster Hunter Rise. I thought it was a ton of fun. Rampage was not my favorite system, the actual Rampage thing. But funnily enough, if you're doing Rampages with friends, they can actually be pretty fun. You know, in moderation. So it'd be something where we'd farm a bunch of monsters and they'd be like, hey guys, let's pump out like 1 or 2 rampages. We'd do that, get the materials from Rampage, then we'd go back to do regular farming. It was kind of like, oh, let's take a break in regular hunting and do rampages. It was a fun system, but not my favorite system to use. Although we did get, I forget what the name of it was, but it was that big artillery weapon, which was like a nuclear bomb in the middle. Like, that was very satisfying. I loved shooting that damn thing. I forget the name of it, but I loved shooting that thing. You guys always knew when you're in my stream and I'm firing that weapon, it's like a big smile on my face. I'm nuking everything from orbit. I'm declaring exterminatus on this whole place. Boom! It was beautiful. It was gorgeous. But anyway, the actual system for endgame weapon upgrades was really, really good. It was mostly deterministic. It was rampage skills. But the fun thing about rampage skills is that you had on certain monsters, because the weapons would each have a subsect of specific rampage skills that you could unlock through interacting with the multiple endgame systems. But specific monsters would actually have something that would be themed around the monster itself. Now, I don't remember all the interactions, but I remember that Magnamalo had like some type of interaction where when you're afflicted with Hellblight or something like that. And I always thought that those were pretty cool. Like, you were trying to get these rampage skills on your weapons, which would actually change your playstyle a little bit. And I always find that is some of the most satisfying endgame systems to interact with, is stuff that actually changes the way that you play the game. It's not just necessarily make number go higher. It's more so, oh, if I use this thing, then I'm playing like this. That's also the reason why I really liked switch skills, but we didn't really get those back in Monster Hunter Wilds, which is a shame. But, you know, Rampage skills was a really, really cool weapon. There was also Rampage weapons, which I was not as big of a fan of, but Rampage weapons were just like more customizable than regular weapons. But Rampage weapons didn't outright replace most weapons. At least I don't think they did. I could be misremembering it, or it could be just Gunlance brain, because Gunlances have so much nuance to them in regards with the shelling level and the shelling type, that usually these types of catch-all systems like Ardians or whatever, they don't always give you like the best configuration that you want out of a Gunlance, so there's that. But the Rampage skill system specifically in Rise, I really, really enjoyed. I really, really liked the way that worked. Then, with the Rise expansion Sunbreak, we had Curious Crafting. Now, here's an interesting thing. Curious Crafting, when it came to armor, was complete RNG. I hated it. As a matter of fact, if you guys remember most of the streams, I would usually only do Curious Crafting at the end, because I knew by the time I would do Curious Crafting in armor, I would not feel like playing the game afterwards because of just how RNG it was. So I would usually save those for the end of the stream, and I'd be like, all right, we did the RNG thing, and I'd call it out for the day, and boom, done. But Curious Crafting for weapons is one of the best systems that we've had, because it was entirely deterministic, and it also encouraged you to hunt different monsters and interact with the endgame systems of the game. So you'd have to level up your anomaly level, and then you'd have to specifically hunt specific monsters in order to get the upgrade materials for the weapon that you wanted to upgrade. And you could basically upgrade every weapon in the weapon tree, which is very satisfying. Not all of them were going to be endgame viable or whatever, but, you know, a lot of them were still somewhat viable in terms of the things that you were able to do, and Curious Crafting really made those weapons shine. So Curious Crafting, I really, really enjoyed it. And that brings us all the way to Monster Hunter Wilds, which is where we are now with the Artian Weapons. Now, interestingly enough, when we first started playing Monster Hunter Wilds, the Ardian Weapons were not the end-all be-all for every single weapon type, right? There were some weapon types that could like edge away with some of the crafted weapons that you would have on the monster tree, which to me was a good thing. So especially when it came to gun lances, actually, Ardian weapons were just trash because they didn't have good shelling level. So we, as gun lance players, we straight up did not use Ardian weapons. So I was like, all right, I don't have to, you know, engage with this system, so I don't really care all that much. I mean, I would engage with it for like sword and shield and stuff like that. It kind of became a system to me where, well, instead of farming monsters, I can just go craft this because it's a little bit easier because I have so many leftover materials on account of the fact that I'm not actually using it on my main weapon. But that's not to say that it was good, because Ardian weapons are extremely RNG. Now, I did get a god roll on one gun lance, which for the gun lances, the best roll that we could have is just attack on every slot. Just increase our attack damage. That's all we want. We just don't want damage. And because they changed Ardian weapons later down with patches to actually become slightly strong, or whatever the nomenclature is, it just made sense for you to, if you were able to get like a god roll weapon with a god roll gun lance with wide, it was going to be really, really good. It's going to deal more damage than most other weapons. But that is, again, one of those systems that I'm not super happy about because it makes the weapon tree obsolete. When you have a system that just makes the weapon tree, all the progression that you made in the game, obsolete, I'm never really a huge fan of it. But then we had another upgrade to Ardian weapons in the form of Gogma Ardian weapons. And this is when it's just like, nah, bro, they're just the best. They're just the best, period. I think that, I don't know exactly how it works for Hunting Horn because I think they have set melodies. So maybe you still pull out some of the hunting horns from the weapon tree to be able to get specific things out of them. Or did the melodies change? I forget. I don't play a lot of Hunting Horn, as you guys can tell, so my apologies. But yeah, the Gogma Ardian weapons just became like so much above and beyond anything that you can get in the weapon tree. Even if they don't roll amazing. Even if they don't roll amazing, they just need to roll like halfway decent. And they're still like way better than anything you can get in the weapon tree. Which to me just doesn't make a lot of sense. I don't like it when the weapon tree becomes obsolete. But that's just me. And I'm presenting this to you. Now, one of the things that I asked recently, both on a YouTube poll in the community tab, which if you guys didn't get that poll, you might want to double check that you're still subscribed to my channel because YouTube's doing like subscriber purge and all of that stuff. So make sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification bell, all of that jazz. And while you're down there, if you're enjoying this video, you can also hit the like button. Helps me out immensely. So thank you for doing that. But yeah, so I made this poll. And on YouTube and on Twitter, I just asked, should Ardian weapons remain the best weapons during the upcoming Monster Hunter Wilds expansion? And overwhelmingly, everybody that interacted with my poll is saying no. And there was a lot of negative sentiment towards Ardian weapons in the comments. I'm not going to address specific comments or whatever, but there was like lots of negative sentiment. Like people do not like the Ardian weapon system because the RNG is just way too much. It is very hard to get a god roll. I believe that it was Vicery who had a video that he put up on Twitter of him just like rolling thousands of materials trying to get a god roll, and he came out with absolutely nothing. You're talking about hundreds of hours of grind of materials all put into like one weapon and getting absolutely nothing. Those are the degrees of RNG that I personally do not like. I understand that there are players that really enjoy those because if they get the roll, then that's like a huge hit of dopamine. And like, ah, I got it. I got the god roll. It's the best. And by the way, you do not require god rolls to play the game. You can play the game without god rolls. I mean, all the gun lances that I'm using right now, they're not god rolls. I do have one that is god rolled, but I don't really use. I mean, that one's kind of like my secondary gun lance that I have in my back pocket. Usually, I use some other ones that are not god rolled because I'm using elemental gun lance. That's a whole another conversation. But regardless of that, you know, so overwhelmingly, anyone that interacted with my poll was like, I do not want Ardian weapons to remain the best weapons in the upcoming Monster Hunter Wilds expansion. So that's the feedback that I've gotten on those polls. I'm curious of people that disagree. Feel free to leave your comment down below. Like I said, do be civil. Do not attack people that like RNG. Do not attack people that like more deterministic systems. Let's just talk about this, have a conversation, see where you guys land in regards to these different systems that we have in Monster Hunter. For me, the best ones were Rise and Sunbreak. I think Rise and Sunbreak had the best endgame weapon upgrade systems in the franchise. Because, I mean, not sure if I would say in the franchise, because some of the older games, I didn't really play them all the way, so I didn't really experience all of those systems, but like, of the ones that I've played, I really like Rampage skills. I think that is a lot of fun. Stuff that actually changes the way that you play the game, I think is very good. Curious crafting also being deterministic while still having you engage with a multitude of different monsters, because there were like categories of monsters that you would get, right? Like, that was fun. It's like, oh, a monster like the Azuchi, which would very quickly become outdated, you could go like, oh, actually, I need to go hunt an Azuchi right now because I actually need materials from Azuchi in order to upgrade this weapon. That's a good thing because it maintains the relevance of a lot of monsters in the game. I thought that was awesome. But also, one thing that I would really, really like to ask the team if they ever end up watching this for whatever reason is like, I think, and let me know in the comment section below if you agree or not, I think that most of us in the community would like the weapon tree to not become obsolete when we get to the end game. Because it really sucks, because we are all extremely passionate about different monsters in the franchise. Everybody, you know, one of the most successful type of content that you see on YouTube when it comes to Monster Hunter is tier lists. Tier lists of monsters, tier lists of weapons, tier lists of whatever, right? We're incredibly passionate about our weapons. We're incredibly passionate about different sets of monsters. And just seeing, you know, this weapon tree that you've crafted for this game and us getting to the end game and just going like, well, we're done with the weapon tree, don't need that anymore. It's just always very sad. So I would like to see the weapon tree remain relevant. But let me know how you guys feel about all this in the comment section down below. Thank you very much for watching. And if you enjoyed the video, like button, subscribe, bell, notification icon, all that jazz. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Stay strong, stay safe, peace out.